everybody, this is Steve Falcon Napier. Thanks so much for joining us on our last lesson in the Certified ChangeWorks System Coach Training Program. Joining me as always is Dave Miller. Say hello, Dave.
Hello, everyone.
Dave's particularly enthusiastic today. Could that be because
I love this stuff.
And it's the last lesson, yay. All right, so here we go. So
Time to get to work.
It's true. Well, what we need to do today is put all these pieces we've been covering in grand detail over all these lessons together into what the actual ChangeWorks system feels like when deployed in a practical kind of way. So we're going to go over it as a kind of more of a discussion today. And then, it's so strange I call it a discussion. The discussion session is what follows this. That's when you guys will be listening to Dave lead the ChangeWorks faculty and senior members of the ChangeWorks professional team in a discussion around how all this is actually used. And they'll be also doing some demonstrations, some kind of role plays that you can watch. And then, of course, all of you will be participating in dialogue sessions. And in the dialogue sessions, those are live. We'll actually have all of you as students work with this material and hope to make it as real for you as we can. But for now, let's just talk about what the system is like when you put it all together. So the ChangeWorks system has a number of steps in it, and this number of steps change based on whether you're doing this purely conversationally, whether you're using a paper and pencil kind of tool to help your client understand what's going on, or whether you're using the online system. So you have lots of opportunities, but the spirit of this coaching methodology is that it's done conversationally. So the ChangeWorks system has several steps to it. We're going to review each of these steps very quickly and just talk our way through how it actually works with a real client. So it begins with a walk along the path of self-discovery. So the path of self-discovery, as you learned, is really just some structure that's being added to the kinds of questioning that a lot of you are no doubt already doing. We do want to make sure we touch upon each of the different steps, and we want to make sure that we try to keep those steps in a specific order, try to keep this information in what we refer to as color-tight compartments so that we're able to thoroughly develop each of these steps before moving on to the next one. This will add greater clarity to your client's understanding of their situation. It also is effectively managing their level of productive tension, which will support them in making decisions and taking actions on those decisions. So we're going to walk the path of self-discovery. Now the path has several steps to it. Each step had a color associated with it, and I don't need to remind all of you that you can go back and listen to any of the recordings we've already done so you can get, revisit any of this detail anytime you'd like. But we let all of you know that you are represented by the blue step. So you as the professional are a little bit above the path that your client is walking, because you're there to help guide them along the path. So the metaphor is that you're a bird up in the sky, that's why it's blue, you're up in the sky, and you are looking down upon the path that your client is walking and doing your best to assist them, help them as they walk that path, and so they don't deviate too far from the path. They get the most they can out of each step of the path and come to their best decision. Now, if you guys will remember back to what we said about the path, the little tagline for the path of self-discovery is discovering the wisdom within. So again, the belief that we have is that the answers are already inside of the client. We're just here to help them tap into those answers. And any of those answers they don't readily have, we believe that they have the capability of finding those answers. We just might need to point them in the right direction or help them open up to some possibilities that trigger other thinking. So, but that's it. So detached guidance is what this is really all about. Now, the path they're going to walk is current situation, the white step, desired situation, the green step. Then we're going to look at whatever may be preventing them from getting to that desired situation. So you've heard us say on several times, if you know where you're at, the current situation, and you know where you're trying to go, the desired situation, one must answer the question, why are you not already there? So you know where you're at, you know where you want to go. what's stopping you from getting there. And that's what the obstacle step is really all about. Those obstacles could be obstacles of part of true physical reality. They're missing a particular resource, or they haven't um, uh, finished a particular first step before moving on to the next step. So there could be some practical things that are in their way, but very often we're dealing with the obstacles of the mind. Have they actually chosen to commit themselves to go from their current situation to their desired situation? What are the emotions they're experiencing around this change that they are saying they want to make? And so very often the obstacles are obstacles that exist nowhere other than between their ears, and anything we can do to help them sort their way through all that is obviously going to be helpful. So just always keep in mind that obstacles, in fact, the phrase we say, if you know where you're at and you know where you're trying to go, but you're not already there, there must be an obstacle or set of obstacles, real or imagined, that are in your way. And until we can identify and address each of those obstacles, whether they're obstacles of practicality or obstacles of the mind, then forward movement is going to be compromised, if not prevented altogether. And so once we've identified these obstacles, we can then move into the solution stage. The solution stage is about identifying courses of action the client could take that would effectively eliminate those obstacles. Because if we can eliminate all the obstacles, movement to the desired situation becomes very natural. So now most programs, and again, this is a review of what you've already learned and been reminded of umpteen times, most programs don't put very much, if any, energy into obstacle identification whatsoever. They instead come up with solutions to help you get to your desired outcome with the assumption that, that there are no obstacles, or the obstacles are insignificant, or if we were to actually name the obstacle, then life as we know it would become infinitely more complex. We respect the fact that as humans, we live within boundaries. We live within a set of limitations that could be real or could be self-imposed, but nevertheless, we recognize that there are obstacles. That doesn't make it bad. If anything, it empowers us to do the best we can do in the set of circumstances we find ourselves in. So we're not afraid of these obstacles. We celebrate the opportunity to identify them and deal with them. And so one of the unique distinguishing factors between our approach and other approaches you may have learned is that we celebrate the identification and elimination of obstacles. So we all have the ability to do it, so let's celebrate the fact that we have that ability. So again, solutions are about obstacle elimination, and yeah, there'll always be a little bit about solutions, about reaching the desired outcome, because if there are no obstacles, we still need to make sure forward movement is happening. So is there a course of action that we need to follow? Is that part of the solution? One might suggest that the absence of an action plan is an obstacle. So even that would go back to identifying and eliminating obstacles. Along the way of doing all these logical steps about identifying current situation, desired situation, obstacles, developing solutions, we also want to recognize that that's all happening in one part of the brain. Well, the other part of the brain, we're having feelings and hunches and instincts and intuition around that, and we want to make sure that we create real space for that part of the discussion to happen. So how do they feel about those solutions? How do they feel about whatever's going on? Now, one of the big questions that came up, and always does when we talk about the path, is, well, don't we have feelings about the current situation? Don't we have feelings about the desired situation? The answer is right, is absolutely right. At all times, this sense of feeling, hunch, instinct, intuition is happening, and it will be shared, because any of the feelings that you have about the current situation are part of the current situation. And the feelings that you have about the desired situation are part of the desired situation. So there's always going to be feelings that will be shared. This particular step, though, is about dedicating time and attention to going inside and checking with the person about what's going on in their thoughts, in their feelings about forward movement, about implementing this situation. So what do they predict will happen if the solution is implemented? What do they predict will happen if the solution is not implemented? So what do they see happening in their future? So we're trying to make a specific spot, not to just let that happen naturally, but to say, let's talk about what's going on in your thoughts, feelings, instinct, intuition, hunches, gut level, whatever it may be. That's the path of self-discovery. Questions, comments, thoughts?
Yeah, just that this could happen over several coaching sessions, or it could happen in 10 minutes. It's
Oh yeah.
very scalable.
Absolutely. You will find that if you use the system and not only use the system yourself, but inform your client of the system as it's used, the client starts to practice their own path of self-discovery. And again, all of you are authorized to gift any one of your clients or prospective clients with the program Mastering Personal Change and online access to their own personal change grid, in which case they will have learned this as they listen to those lessons. And so you will find that the more someone walks the path, the faster a path walk becomes, mostly because they don't jump all over the place. Part of what makes conversations take as long as they seem to take is that people are jumping around. So you get a little bit of current situation, and then someone wants to jump to a solution. I mean, prematurely though that may be, they still go, like, I could do blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you could. So, but let's go back to what are the obstacles? So they're jumping all over, and for a while, it can feel like you're trying to, herd a cat or herd cats. And so we're trying to get the person to walk the path of self-discovery, to discover the wisdom within in an organized kind of way that allows them to optimize the time they spend in each one of these steps. And as they get better at that, more comfortable with doing that, as they start to understand that there will be space for everything to be talked about, for everything to be shared. So no need to hurry and make it happen now. The opportunity will never be lost. It's going to be there. They can relax a bit more, and they can move through this path more comfortably. The other thing is that once your clients understand the path, you can always say to them, that's also a very important self-coaching skill. And obviously this applies to all of you as well. Anytime you need to make any sort of decision in any real area of life, you might want to just go, I need to walk the path. Let me just walk the path. If you are talking to a prospective client, you're going like, I don't know how to really have this conversation. Just walk the path. So as people start to hear over and over again, walk the path, the first thing you're going to do is walk the path, walk the path, walk the path. They start to do it, and it becomes kind of a natural part of the way that they operate. And then it can happen very quickly. That said, I continue to this day to work with clients that I've worked with for a decade, or almost 2 decades in a couple of cases, and I still need to remind them to walk the path, and they still jump all over the place, and they still can spend an inordinate amount of time talking about a particular step. So, life is life. So we have to allow that to happen. But anything we can do to encourage people to understand and use this path walk, the greater the level of efficiencies have the chance of being. Okay, other thoughts, Dave?
No.
Okay, so now there are a couple of refinements that we talked about as the path walk occurs, specifically that happen during the green step, the desired the desired situation discussion, and the black step, the obstacles discussion. And so we said that when you are asking someone to talk about what they want, what's their desired outcome, there are 4 different aspects to look at that desired outcome from, and it's very important that you do all 4 of these. And so as they talk about whatever they want, what do they hope to gain as a result of doing that? What do they hope to lose? What do they not want to gain? What do they not want to lose? These are the four aspects of control that we talked about during the nature of change. And the desired outcome actually touches, will need to touch upon all four of these, whether we do it consciously and deliberately up front, or it creeps up on its own later. Sooner or later, all four of these aspects come to the surface. So if we can deliberately do this during that green step, during that desired situation, that outcome development sort of stage, we can get a lot greater clarity, and that helps us as we move on to the subsequent steps. So when it comes to, as far as X is concerned, what do we hope to gain? What do you hope to lose? What do you not want to gain? What do you not want to lose? Now, we can go over this in great detail right now, or you guys can always go back in the recordings to have a refresher. But does anyone have any questions, thoughts about using this four aspects of control structure as you're having your client talk about their desired situation?
Not seeing any questions.
Okay, so now when you get to the obstacle identification, we talked about earlier in the program, we talked about the four root causes of struggle and failure, the four roots of poor performance. And obviously this applies when if you're a manager dealing with employees or, other scenarios of life, but it's always applies at the individual level as well. So as your client starts to talk about what's in their way, those obstacles that they are identifying, or whether they are, again, real or imagined, are going to fall into four categories. Those four categories are unaware, unable, unwilling, and unsuitable. So some of these obstacles could simply be obstacles of awareness. And if we can help them to become aware of what's going on, then that might fix the whole problem. Maybe it's about ability. Ability is, again, about more concrete things. So knowledge and skill, experience, maybe some true physical resource. If I can make sure that those ability issues are addressed, then fine, they can move forward. But the lack of those abilities, the lack of that knowledge, lack of that skill, experience, or resource could render their forward movement impossible. They're unable to move forward, even though they're fully aware of what's going on. The next category would be about willingness. And maybe this is the one that you deal with more frequently, where for whatever reasons they are hesitant to move forward. There is some fear, spoken or unspoken. There is some say hesitancy is a good one, and maybe it's not hesitancy that's overt. It's far more subtle. It's more like a tentativeness because of a lack of enthusiasm about it. So maybe the unwillingness is because they're trying to avoid something unpleasant. Maybe the unwillingness is that it simply isn't compelling enough to muster enough energy to really want to do it. So the level of drive isn't there. The level of excitement, enthusiasm, passion, whatever word you want to use, just isn't really there. Well, it all translates into a person who doesn't really want to move forward on it. And so unwillingness issues are things that we frequently encounter. And by the way, you can be fully able, fully aware, and still be totally unwilling. So, but that said, if you are unaware of something, it's not surprising to discover they're also unwilling, or if they're unable to do something, then a secondary obstacle is they're unwilling to do it. Not surprising, right? Because if you can't do it, no wonder you're unwilling to do it. So when we're talking about unwillingness issues, we're saying that even if you're fully able and fully aware and everything else is right, you still may not be willing to do it. So, so sometimes an unwillingness obstacle is pure, and sometimes it's secondary to another obstacle that may be happening there. I see Daniel has his hand raised. Although let me just say before we have Daniel contribute here, there's also unsuitability issues. Maybe it's just not a good match. So and it's not, maybe it's a match overall, but there's something specific that's going to need to be done, and that's not a suitable match for whoever it happens to be. And I can give you practical examples of every one of these if you guys would like them, but again, we'd be reviewing material that was covered in a prior lesson, and I'm okay to do that if you want. So Daniel, I think you can unmute yourself, or Dave, you can.
I believe I am unmuted.
Yes, so what can we do?
All right, very good. Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to tag on, as T knows, I've been very aware and very able and quite suitable for the things that I want to do, but I've been wanting to do them, but I haven't been doing them because of a trauma that I was totally unaware of and totally frustrated by until it finally came above ground, and I was then aware of it and able to do something about it, and now am moving forward, ready, willing, able, and taking action. That's
Excellent.
what I wanted to share.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Yeah, and so, and that's it. See, a lot of times people may not be able to verbalize what the foundation of the unwillingness is. So there could be other issues that need to be explored. As Daniel pointed out, there was an awareness issue that was there. You know, you don't know that you don't know something. You don't know, you're not aware of the fact that you're unaware of something, because that would make you aware. So you know, we have to help people kind of explore and understand and probe and ask and think and meditate and all those other things that could help that awareness happen. There are certain times that we as the outsider, and I'm talking about not only in our professional role, but just as in our life role, we may be aware of things that someone else isn't aware of, and the moment we even mention it, suddenly the awareness starts to happen. But point is, these are the 4 categories of obstacles that a person could encounter. And so I think from a conversational perspective, when I'm coaching a client, I will actually say to them, are there any ability issues? If they're having trouble, you know, coming up. But usually when I say what's stopping you from getting there, you know, the floodgates open and they just start sharing. So that's great. But if you need to prime the pump a little bit, there are some good questions you could ask. So what ability issues might there be? What willingness issues might there be? What understanding might you still be exploring? So they may not be fully unaware, but there is a partial an awareness gap that needs to be fulfilled. What about how close of a fit do these things feel with what it is that you want to do? So that's trying to get into the suitability. So there are questions you could ask to try to stimulate the person to share what each of these different categories of obstacles may be. And so the method is that as you're walking the path and you're talking about the desired outcome, that you make sure you probe for all 4 of these aspects of control. And as you start to look at obstacles, that you try to see, are there obstacles of all 4 categories? Are the obstacles purely in one? So there's not always obstacles in multiple categories. Sometimes the obstacles fall squarely into one of them, or 2, you know, so you need to explore that to know what's really happening. Okay, so that's the path of self-discovery. That's the structure. Now, as you are walking along this path of self-discovery, the ChangeWorks system coaching approach tells you that you should be listening for something. What you should be listening for are potential activities that you want to explore in greater detail. And so this idea about defining activities is something that you can do very subtly. So as you're having your discussion with your client, you could be making mental note of this. You could just be jotting a few things down, or you could be doing this very deliberately, particularly if they've already had such an experience with you. You could say, well, let's go ahead and populate a change grid while we're doing that. So you can grab out the paper and pencil change grid, and you can just use it as a place to write down the activities you think could merit pursuing. Or you could open it up on screen, go right online using their personal change grid or using your individual ChangeWorks profile. capability, and you could be building the activity list online in the system. So that's up to you, whether you're doing it purely conversationally, paper and pencil, or using the digital options. That's up to you. But we need to define this list of mission critical activities. Those activities could come out of the current situation, so things that they are doing and need to continue doing. It could be each one of those goals that we talked about could be listed there. Each aspect of each one of those goals could be there. So what do you hope to gain? Well, I want to gain this, this, this. Well, gaining something is an activity. Or I don't want to gain ... Well, that might be more about avoiding ... whatever that happens to be. And so you can find lots of great potential activities as you work your way through the green step. Certainly, when you get to the obstacle identification, every one of those obstacles could become an activity, eliminating this, addressing this, overcoming this, whatever those obstacles happen to be. And then the solutions part is certainly filled with activities that you might want to explore. And that could be things like, well, part of the solution could be gaining a particular ability. Part of a solution could be getting a particular resource readily available to you. And so there are lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of activities that could come up as this path walk occurs. The challenge is not coming up with enough activities. The challenge is culling that list of activities into something that is truly mission critical, truly manageable, truly essential to what's going on. And that's why we generally recommend that as you are capturing these activities, you might want to just capture them on a piece of paper, or if you can open up a Word document and just start listing them in Word, that's the best way to capture them. And then you can just copy and paste them into the online system if you so choose to do that. You will end up with, no exaggeration, dozens, perhaps hundreds of activities that you could explore with benefit to the client. But we don't need to explore all of them. We just need to explore enough of them. And enough of them is not defined by some specific number of them, but what is truly essential? What are the activities that, if we help them to really understand them more thoroughly and help them to really complete these activities, we would take them a quantum leap towards their desired outcome. We refer to those as mission critical activities. There's lots of mission incidental, there's lots of mission circumstantial, there's lots of mission optional, there's lots of activities. What are the truly mission critical activities? And this is where your skills at helping someone reach great clarity around what those key changes would be, that's where this really gets put to the test. So how do you go about really extracting the best possible activities? Obviously, that's something we'll be talking about again during your discussion sessions. Okay, questions about defining activities, anyone?
No, looks
Okay.
like we're all good.
Okay, great. Now, after you have defined the activities, well, now you can actually start doing the change grid. You can actually start to do the tension management part of it. And again, you could do this conversationally. You could do this paper and pencil. You could do this online. But you just want to ask someone, well, as far as activity number one is concerned, or this activity is concerned, how do you rate your ability to do that? Now, your client is likely to say something like, well, it's pretty good, or it's not so great. You're going to get one of these non-numeric ratings, and that could be just fine when you're using this conversationally. So maybe say like, well, would you say it's low, moderate, high, moderately low, moderately high? I mean, you're actually creating systems, rating systems with two options, binary, good or bad. Maybe it is a three-part system, a three-point scale. Is it bad, moderate, good? Is it 5-point? It's awful, not so great, It's in the middle. It's pretty good. It's great. You know, you're creating 3-point, 5-point, 7-point scales conversationally without perhaps even consciously or deliberately doing it. So, but as people start to relate to you, how they are rating their level of ability to do something, you as professionals who are aware of the change grid and hopefully by this point can see it in your head, you know that there is this scale about the person's level of ability. That's what you're just trying to do, figure out where are they on this ability scale. And often I'll just say to them, give me a number between 0 and 12. And they go like, not 1 and 10? Nope, 0 and 12. Give me a number. And I like to disrupt that whole pattern of trying to think about a 10-point scale. So 0 to 12, and obviously that maps to the change grid. So one way or another, we want to get a rating. How do they assess their ability to do it? Whether it's just conversational, good or bad, whether it is very fine-tuned and they say it's an 11.8. Whatever it is, that's cool. It's helping us to understand where they are on the change grid, and that's what we want. Okay, now after we assess their ability, we'll do similarly the challenge. How challenging or difficult do they think it's going to be? And again, they might give us a very conversational rating. They might give us a very calculated rating, but we want to assess the level of challenge. Now, this third one we do frequently do conversationally. Well, how important is that? Because there's a lot of things out there that you can do well and that aren't all that difficult, but so you go like, okay, so fine, so that's a given. You can do it. It's not difficult. Let's check that off the list. Nah, they might not think it's all that important. See, importance starts to get into a little bit about that whole willingness side of things. And so I want to know, how important is this to you? What's the priority you have around this? Keep in mind that just because someone has high ability to do something that is not particularly challenging, and yet it is very important to them, you would think that means it's done. But I can tell you, and hopefully, in fact, I'll repeat that. I want you guys to tell me where they end up on the change grid. If they think their ability is very high and the challenge is very low, that puts them where on the change grid? High ability, low challenge. Perceptions of high ability, low challenge puts them where on the change grid?
It's going to put them down grid.
Down grid, down in apathy or power apathy. Now, if they say there's a high level of importance though, we go like, well, that improves the possibilities, but guess what? They're still in power apathy or they're still down grid about an important activity. Flags should be going up now. So willingness issues will tend to be the culprit when we've got such a situation arise. Okay, and obviously, as we start talking about actual change grids during your discussion sessions and your dialogue sessions, you'll have this feel very real to you. Okay, so importance. Okay, was there questions, comments about that? I thought I saw, yep, got some comments coming in there.
Yeah, Daniel was just saying apathy and avoidance and termination.
Yeah, well, and that's very frequently the case, even when people have mission critical activities, things that they have said are of profound importance to them, they could still have insufficient productive tension to move forward. That is perhaps, well, we talk about that. That represents untapped potential, unrealized dreams, unfulfilled missions. So this is where we need to start helping the person to discover the why. What is the catalyst? Where is the potential for increasing your level of productive tension? And that's what we get into next. Now that we know where they are on the change grid, or we have the assessments, we now start to look at the change grid. Now, when I say plotting the responses on the change grid, you could be plotting this entirely in your head. So you could be plotting this on a napkin where you quickly sketch out a little change grid. You could use a printed out change grid to do it, or you could be doing it online. You've got lots of different options, but one way or another, you need to be able to answer the question, where does that put them on the change grid? And hopefully, if they're already informed about how the change grid operates, you could show them. I mean, remember that the change grid's nickname was the oracle of the self. The change grid is you talking to you about you. And so if we can actually do it on a piece of paper, or we can do it on screen, we can say, here, this is a mirror reflecting conversations that you are having with you about you. Look at what you're saying to yourself about these issues. And whether that's all conversational or whether that's something that takes a physical form, whatever. Nevertheless, it's actually happening. So this plotting needs to occur. At the very least, all of you need to imagine, or rather envision, visualize in your mind's eye where this person is plopping on the change grid. Why? But because step 5 says we now need to read the change grid. And if it's conversational, it's just about share with them some of the insights that the change grid is offering. So again, at the very least, what's their perceived level of ability? What's the perceived level of challenge? If you can answer those 2 questions, you can see where they plot on the change grid in a general area or in a very specific location. From that, we can determine what their level of productive tension happens to be. And you can in turn share with them some of the insights that you know are true about each of these levels of productive tension: stress, power, power, apathy, and apathy. So there could be a lot there that you share with and get them to engage with you in some dialogue around that. You might say, well, based on your perceptions, you're in an outgrid mindset, or an upgrid, or a downgrid, or an ingrid. You know, we sometimes we just say, well, you know, you're plotting downgrid right now. Now, what do you know about being downgrid? And again, if my client has some experience with it already, they might even say to me, I'm downgrid about that. I'm outgrid about that. I'm upgrid about that. I'm ingrid about that. And so it might be that just knowing which of these quadrants stimulates some insights and dialogue. We talked about the danger zones. If they're plotting in an extreme location, there's something to be said around that. And again, you can go back to the lessons on the danger zones to revisit what it is that could be explored. This one we use very frequently, talking about the energy that someone has around a particular activity. And so again, the change grid is not a personality test. It's not a traditional psychometric tool of any sort. We are looking at specific activities. We're looking at a particular moment in time and asking ourselves, how is this person responding to these activities, or how are they positioned as far as completing this activity at this particular moment? And to us, that makes it even more useful for coaches, because we're trying to help the person in the moment. And if we know what's going on with them in that moment, we can work with them in that moment. And so let's kind of work with that. And so we talk about these labels as being the energy that someone has around a particular activity. And so if conversationally, I'd say, well, how would you rate your ability? And you say, well, my ability's pretty good to do that. And how challenging do you think it is? It's kind of like, oh, no, it's really challenging. Well, pretty good for ability would probably be around here, 6, 7, 8, 9, pretty good. Really challenging puts me up here on the challenge scale. The energy they have around that would be an expressive driver. And so if I said to them, all right, so around that, you definitely want to make something happen. And the way you want to make it happen is by being enthusiastic around it, et cetera, et cetera. Tell me a little bit more about that. So I give them a little glimpse into what that energy translates into in terms of attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. And then I throw it to them. Tell me more about that. Does that resonate with you? What do you want to add to that? And then they talk around that. Do you think that's a good energy to have to support you as far as that activity is concerned? And they'll say yay or nay. And if the answer is no, well, then obviously we need to move them. Help them move themselves. All right, so we talk a lot about energies. Now, after we have, I missed. I wonder why the engagement rings isn't showing. Well, just then, you guys are also aware that there is this engagement ring level. The engagement ring talks about, are they are they aware? Do they have an intention? Are they actively engaged energetically? Are they executing? And so that could be another layer of information that you're sharing with them around that. But ultimately, when it's all done, it's time to develop these action plans. And these action plans are where those change grid maneuvers came into play. And so we talked about the 5 different types of change grid maneuvers. And they're all named after the direction someone moves on the grid energetically if you apply this maneuver set. So downgrid, upgrid, outgrid, ingrid, and PowerPoint. And so the downgrid maneuver, so if we needed to lower someone's level of tension, Normalize, simplify, restore resources, add resources. We spent half of a session just talking about downgrid maneuvers. We also spent half of a session talking about upgrade maneuvers. How do you go about raising someone's level of productive tension? You do that by increasing standards, changing the task, awakening emotions, and or boosting accountability. So upgrade and downgrade maneuvers are the primary tension management techniques that we apply. And then once we have them moved upgrade or downgrade to wherever it is we want them to be, the question becomes, do we need to do something to also move them further outgrid or bring them further ingrid? And so the outgrid and ingrid maneuvers are all about drive. So I can have a good level of tension. Do I also want to now direct that tension energetically towards action being taken? If I do, then I might want to add some outgrid maneuvers. Outgrid maneuvers increase drive, and we do that by helping the person to step into a greater level of risk, take a chance. And so increase the risk, appeal to their ego, inspire through leadership to get them into a leadership role themselves, and then provide whatever coaching we can on the performance side of things to fine tune their behaviors, their approach, their strategy to get them all the way to their destination. So providing performance coaching specifically. In-grid maneuvers, not used very frequently at all. Usually when people are in the danger zone outgrid, we would do it, but reduce the risk. Appeal to nobler motives, review boundaries, increase introspection. If they seem to be a bit too driven and you just want to relax for a second, back off a little bit, these are what the in-grid maneuvers are really all about. And then last time around, we talked about PowerPoint maneuvers. What sorts of things center you? So very frequently, before we start to do any specific upgrade, downgrade, ingrid, outgrid maneuvers, we might want to have our client stop for a moment and do PowerPoint maneuvers. PowerPoint maneuvers are unique to the individual and effectively move them to a centered place on the change grid where they can be a bit detached from what's going on, so they can become a bit more objective about what's going on. They can, look at the world around them, kind of like the rest of the world is frozen in time for just a moment, so they can separate themselves emotionally from it, so that intellectually they can explore it in greater detail. So there's a lot of benefit. It is very easy to move someone to the PowerPoint if you know their PowerPoint maneuvers, and you can't know their PowerPoint maneuvers until they know their PowerPoint maneuvers. So asking a client early on, what sorts of things center you? When you've got life happening all around you, chaos unfolding all around you, when you're feeling too far, upgrade, outgrid, downgrade, or ingrid, what kinds of things do you do to help move yourself to a more peaceful place, a more centered spot? And it's going to be different for different people. As we said last time around, some PowerPoint maneuvers can be done very quietly in the mind and done quickly. Other things can be done physically, requiring external sorts of actions to be taken, and they can take a good long time. So if you can center yourself by taking 3 deep breaths, or you can center yourself by going through on a walk in nature, both of these are PowerPoint maneuvers, very effective PowerPoint maneuvers, but one might be handier than the other given a certain set of circumstances. So this is why it's important that we help our clients to understand a broader range of whatever their PowerPoint maneuvers may happen to be. So what sorts of things center you? What sorts of things center them? This is what we may want to do first. Once you're in the center of the change grid, now we can decide, do they need to be moved up grid? A little bit up grid maneuvers? Do they need to be moved out grid? What is it that really needs to be done? Okay, so these are the change grid maneuvers. That's the tension management actually happening. So questions about the maneuvers?
No questions.
Okay, then the last thing that you would do to bring the system to its conclusion is you would go back to walking the path of self-discovery. And as you walk that path of self-discovery on the specific issue that you've now taken all the way through the action plan, you should discover that it's been resolved. And so they are, in fact, at where they wanted to be. The current situation and the desired situation as they put forth before are now one and the same. There are no obstacles. The solution has been fully implemented, and now you could ask them how they feel about that, and they would say, great, celebrate it. Now, that's really wonderful. That brings us all to closure. But what you will learn very quickly using this approach, if you have not already learned this using your current approaches, is that people who are on a life path never reach a conclusion. They may check certain things off of their list, but that then liberates their energy to explore what's next. And so you may want to cycle back and say, well, let's walk the path again. Now that you have this new current situation, great, which was your prior desired situation, what's the new desired situation? What's next for you? And then you're back on the path walk. Well, what's stopping you from getting there? And let's develop some solutions. Let's come up with that activity list. And so you can find that this approach is actually kind of self-perpetuating, because life is self-perpetuating. So that's the ChangeWorks system, kind of putting it all together. You can use it very deliberately in order to help someone get from their current situation to their desired situation, and then celebrate the realization of whatever that desired outcome happens to be. And then you can use it to perpetuate, to explore what's next, to take them on whatever the next journey in their life may be. So that is the ChangeWorks system. Questions, comments about the overall system?
I think one observation I've had using this for over a decade is not only is it really effective in getting people to get results, which is one of the key reasons they hire us as coaches, but through this journey of using the system with your client, you share with them, at least I do, all these principles of tension management, and they develop such a deeper self-awareness and effectiveness with other people as they become tension managers too.
Yep. And that's happening because they start to use the language.
Yes.
We start hearing them talk about stress and power stress and upgrade and outgrid and this and that. You go like, okay. Because again, remember, the change grid is not some sort of let's say an artificial sort of tool. The change grid really exists in someone's head. It's always been there. It's always going to be there. But they don't understand it until we bring this to their awareness. And so, if anything, what we hope the ChangeWorks coaching system is actually doing is not giving someone something they didn't already have, but giving them the ability to tap into something that's always been part of who they are. And when you do that, as Dave's just pointed out, you awaken certain things that individual that changes who they are, but also helps them to interact with other people more effectively. And so that changes the relationships that they're involved with as well. That's why we wanted to make sure that all of you have the opportunity to gift people with the Mastering Personal Change program, and people to have their own change grid. Long ago, we had a tagline on our very first website, and that tagline is something that we still use to this day, that says, information so valuable we want everyone to know. And we have never feared the change grid and these insights of tension management leaking out and somehow or another compromising our opportunities, our livelihoods. The opposite is actually true. The more aware people become of tension management in their lives and in the lives of all those around them, the more they see that everything in life is about tension management, the greater the opportunity is. But instead of doing introductory work with people, you tend to take people who do introductory work for themselves to that final outcome, or they need you to help them to become a finisher in a world of starters, to help them conquer their 80% existence, to help them get really all the way to wherever it is they really want it to be. So with that, are there any final comments, thoughts? I see we've got a lot of comments coming in there, Dave. So what's being shared?
Yeah, Kathy says, this is a very coherent system that takes the full range of human experience into account and allows for a range of modalities for growth. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent. Okay, others? Anything else you want to share there?
No, I mean, if it's not too much trouble, can you put all the steps, that one slide that had all the steps listed?
Yeah, I've got to go back a bunch.
See that?
There we are.
Yeah, great. Just to get the full picture again. So.
Yeah, it'd be good. Maybe I should add number 7, cycle back to step 1, walk the path. But that's actually it, So now just as a part of a reminder for all of you, your education may have begun here, but it does not end here. So for decades, it's not an exaggeration, for at least the past 20 plus years, we have had weekly calls with all of our ChangeWorks community members, ChangeWorks professional team members, where they just drop in and bring up whatever issues they might have going on. Sometimes it's about a change grid they want advice on. Sometimes it's about a client they're trying to pursue. Sometimes it's just about what's happening in the world and how does tension management apply to what's going on out there. But it's part of your ongoing education, and so we want to encourage all of you to participate in, we call it OPD, ongoing professional development. It's all part of it. There's not a charge for it. It's all part of what it is that you're doing. So there's lots of things that you can be tapping into. And so we encourage all of you to do that. Also remember that in order for you to receive your continuing education credits for this course, you do need to complete the discussion sessions, which are recordings of Dave leading dialogue with the ChangeWorks community members and or rather the ChangeWorks faculty members and key members of the ChangeWorks community. And then you do need to also participate in those live dialogue sessions. You need to complete a certain number of them for the number of hours to be right, but they happen in an ongoing basis. You're always welcome to participate in those as well. So you have at least 2 opportunities every single week to continue your education, and we would encourage all of you to tap into that to whatever degree you possibly can. So with that, anything else?
No, sir.
All right, then your next step, now I got to click through a whole bunch of other ones, but your next step is to do the discussion session for lesson number 8, putting it all together. So with that, thank you all very much for joining in, and we wish you great success as a certified ChangeWorks system coach. Bye, everybody.